What thoughts or feelings does this photo of planet Mars invoke? As I researched the topic of Mars colonization, I came across three main responses. A few will look at this photo and see a finish line. With conviction, these space enthusiasts say, this is where humans should be headed. This is where some of us will live. It's only a matter of time. I want to help get us there as quickly as possible. Some even say, it's my dream to one day live on Mars. As they gaze at this photo, their hearts quicken with adrenaline. They yearn for adventure and exploration in a new world. While they see a finish line, an atheist might draw a question mark on this photo. He wonders, did life on Earth originate on Mars? Do extraterrestrial life forms exist? He hopes that rovers can find life beyond Earth, evidence which would support the theory of evolution and hush the Christians that would point to the uniqueness of our planet. The atheist also sees Mars as an escape. He believes it is wise to spread out across the galaxy, because at any moment, Earth could be destroyed and the human species with it. The final group would also draw a question mark on this photo, but maybe with the word why, written in capital letters before it. Why would we ever want to send humans to Mars? Mars is devoid of life. It is barren, it is inhospitable, it is millions of miles from Earth. What could humanity possibly gain from going there? Months ago, before starting my research, I expected that I would be standing here agreeing with this last view, presenting all the reasons why colonizing Mars would be an unwise decision for the United States to make. I thought it would be impressive for astronauts to venture beyond the moon and explore a whole new planet, but I wondered why NASA and the world's richest men see the endeavor as a great priority. Primarily, I wondered, would colonizing Mars be beneficial to our nation? If so, is it worth the risks and the expenses? For weeks, I pored over the experts' arguments with a critical eye. Toward the middle of my research phase, I was surprised to find myself somewhat in favor of colonizing Mars. By the end, I was fully in favor. Today, in hopes of generating reconsideration and discussion on this topic, I am privileged to present my reasons why the United States should prioritize the development of a Mars colony within the next 20 years. First, I want to make clear that my vision of a Mars colony is that of a permanent base on the planet Mars, which will serve much like a scientific station in Antarctica. Scientists and researchers will take the 7-month journey to the red planet to live there temporarily to carry out their important work before returning to Earth. As my argument unfolds, it will become clear why the U.S. should send humans and not just rovers to colonize Mars. Before we discuss that, however, I want to answer the question of why NASA has delayed in sending humans to Mars. I can confidently say that it is not because sending humans to Mars is impossible or too risky. I spent much of the first phase of my research judging the credibility of several brilliant scientists and analyzing their unique, well-fleshed-out plans for a manned mission to Mars. They each agreed that technology has advanced enough to the point where we have a fair chance of success. Setting an expectation that the United States will have the beginnings of a colony by 2041, however, grants a generous amount of time to allow for more technological advances, which will both improve the chances of the mission's success and cut back its expenses. Such a deadline also ensures that NASA will prioritize their plan. So, if sending astronauts to Mars is possible, why haven't we already done it? Dr. Zubrin, the brilliant scientist, writer, and president of the Mars Society, explains that NASA has delayed because it simply lacked the resolve and public support. Now, however, NASA is gaining support and is committed to a plan of preparation. As a first major step, NASA is planning on returning astronauts to the moon in 2024, this time not to visit, but to stay. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine explained that by learning how to live and work on the moon, NASA will be better equipped to eventually send astronauts to Mars. The agency awarded contracts to private companies SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Dynetics in exchange for 10 months of their help in developing lunar landers. As this strengthens foreign diplomacy, the U.S. should keep partnering with other countries as it seeks to colonize Mars. In a moment, I will unfold the costs of colonizing Mars a little bit further. First, however, I will explain why establishing a Mars colony would not be an incredible waste of money, as many believe, but rather a very wise and beneficial investment. Second, I will argue that America ought to lead the colonization endeavors so as to maintain peace. Third, I will point out that the resources present on Mars make it the ideal planet to colonize. Fourth, based on the positive effects of the Apollo 11 mission, I will argue that colonizing Mars will both unite us and improve our nation's economy like never before. Finally, I will conclude by urging American citizens to show support for a settlement on Mars and will explain how Christians can influence the government and private sectors in moving forward with the mission. While some would argue that colonizing Mars is an enormous waste of money, investing in this endeavor will bring about new technologies that will benefit not only American citizens, but all of humanity. Though there is much debate among experts about an estimated cost, sending humans to Mars will undoubtedly cost tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars. In fact, in a Washington Post article detailing concerns about colonizing Mars, reporter Joel Achenbach stated that the U.S. government would require financial support from the private sector, as it, quote, doesn't have the budget for Mars colonization, end quote. Many ask, why should our country spend billions of dollars to send some people into space instead of using that money to solve problems here on Earth? Christians in particular have been pressing this question. I'm encouraged by this because as Christians, we know that God has commanded us to invest wisely. Through the parable of the 5 talents found in Matthew 25, Jesus explains that we are to use our God-given resources, time, money, skills, in ways that glorify God. How does the church glorify God? 1 John 2:6 says that whoever says he abides in Jesus ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. Christians should imitate Christ. Well, what did Jesus do while on earth? What was his mission? Jesus did not only come to die on the cross and rise again so that we might receive salvation from sins. During his earthly ministry, Jesus cared for the poor and healed the sick, acts of love which opened hearts to the message of eternal life which he preached. Simply stated, he sought to undo, through words and deeds, the effects of the curse that marred creation with death, sickness, and decay. Christians, therefore, ought to also share the gospel as they seek to undo the effects of the curse in ways such as helping the needy and preserving the earth. As I said before, I'm encouraged by the fact that believers and unbelievers are asking if colonizing Mars would benefit the earth and its inhabitants. But what saddens me is the large number of people who forego the step of researching this question. Too many people jump to the conclusion that expensive space-related missions are a waste and a distraction, that they rob us of time, money, and resources that should be directed toward more worthy goals, like solving the issue of world hunger. I admit that before starting my research, I too jumped to this conclusion. However, through researching, I soon realized that sending Americans to Mars will serve as a key to opening the doors to many opportunities for stewardship and charity on Earth. Follow along with me, and I'll explain how I reached this realization, starting with a brief study of the effects of the Apollo 11 mission. For the sake of landing men safely on the moon, NASA created thousands of inventions. Later, these inventions were released into the public domain, resulting in spin-off technologies that made major improvements in the fields of computer technology, environment and agriculture, health and medicine, public safety, transportation, recreation, and industrial productivity. Forget those simple space-age inventions like Velcro and memory foam. How about cochlear implants and insulin pumps? How about standards for food safety guidelines and improved water purification systems? How about the cameras in our smartphones? NASA's work is the root of all these life-altering inventions and thousands of others. It is worth noting here that a large portion of the technologies that sprang from the Apollo 11 mission were life-changing because they were intentionally designed to protect the lives of the astronauts. NASA decided to accept the riskier challenge of landing men safely on the moon instead of just an empty rocket. This pressured NASA's workers to reach new technological heights in a greater variety of fields. Hence, if the American society desires a fresh wave of advanced technologies that we can repurpose to radically undo the brokenness within our world, then it is not enough for NASA to continue sending rovers to colonize the Red Planet. NASA needs the more ambitious goal of sending humans to colonize Mars. The money spent in support of settling on Mars is not a waste, but rather an investment in new technologies that can help improve lives everywhere. As long as the United States leads the efforts to colonize Mars, we can reaffirm the conviction that new advanced technologies must be repurposed in ways that will improve lives. In his famous We Go to the Moon speech delivered at Rice University, President Kennedy wisely stated that technology itself does not have a conscience. It is man who decides whether it will become a force for good or ill. Hence, Kennedy reasoned, if America desires to continue playing the noble role of peacekeeper, then the U.S. must preserve its edge in science and technology. This same principle applies today. If Americans choose to lead our partners in the efforts of Mars colonization, we can influence them to view this project as an opportunity for peaceful exploration, not as a provocative grab for territory on a distant planet. We can set the expectation that any inventions and discoveries resulting from the mission should be used to improve lives, not to harm them. Moreover, America's leadership of the mission to colonize Mars will be critical in determining how to steward Mars resources. The presence of promising resources on Mars supports the reason why the U.S. should colonize there. Before starting my research, I didn't understand why so many space enthusiasts desire Mars as the site for a colony. Why are they not satisfied with colonizing the Moon? While I admitted that going to a new and much more remote planet would be impressive, I thought it might be just a bit inconvenient, not to mention expensive, for supply ships to launch from Earth and cross millions of miles to make frequent deliveries to Mars. Believing the planet to be resource-bare, I was surprised to learn that future Martian colonists could live there almost self-sufficiently. According to Dr. Zubrin, the red planet possesses a variety of resources existing in massive quantities. Americans could melt its ice, construct greenhouses and living quarters from the planet's raw materials, grow crops in natural sunlight, harness electricity using solar panels, wind turbines, and geothermal power plants. With all these resources already present on Mars, Americans would not need to worry that future Martian colonists would drain their country's wealth and supplies. And the materials available on Mars have the potential to benefit all American citizens, not just Martian colonists. Dr. Zubrin notes that there is one commercial resource that is known to exist ubiquitously on Mars in large amounts: deuterium. Deuterium, the heavy isotope of hydrogen, can be used as the fuel in nearly waste-free thermonuclear fusion reactors. Thus, environmentalists hope that it will eventually replace the need to produce energy from fossil fuels. By colonizing on Mars, scientists can focus on experimenting with deuterium and obtaining greater quantities of it than what is available on Earth. This would hasten the switch to eco-friendly thermonuclear fusion reactors, sending the oil spills and atmospheric pollution grinding to a halt. Americans would honor God by investing in this revolutionary step toward protecting and preserving the Earth. Furthermore, the investments made in support of colonizing Mars would raise America's employment rates, thus strengthening our economy and cultivating a spirit of unity. When it comes to the details of the newest rocket or rover, we often hear about their enormous costs. As a result, we tend to overlook the fact that these costs compose only a small portion of NASA's yearly budget. In a video titled, "Is NASA a Waste of Money?", Mark Rober, a former NASA engineer, pointed out that the majority of NASA's yearly budget goes to the salaries of tens of thousands of some of America's most skilled workers. These are high-paying jobs, which reward some of America's most ambitious, most educated workers. As NASA strives to colonize the red planet, it will certainly hire a steady stream of additional qualified scientists and engineers and researchers. But to accomplish this massive project, I'm confident that NASA won't hire STEM field experts alone. Buzz Aldrin, the second man to set foot on the moon, recalls that the crew of Apollo 11 was composed of scientists and engineers, but also policymakers and flight directors, navigators and suit testers, and those on the shop floor, such as the seamstresses who stitched the 21 layers of fabric for each custom-tailored spacesuit. Like Apollo 11, the goal of colonizing Mars would employ thousands of Americans with diverse professions. Mrs. Marinkovic, who has taught economics at PEP for 12 years, emphasized the fact that every nation considers low levels of unemployment to be a top priority, as mass employment is critical for maintaining domestic peace. She also noted that these kind of large public investment projects have shown large economic growth. Beyond increasing the rate of employment, the mission to the moon encouraged STEM education in America. During the Apollo-era years from 1961 to 1971, enthusiasm for STEM education peaked. The more challenging mission to establish a colony on Mars would produce results like these, only on a much greater scale. Such excitement over STEM education would produce millions of young scientists, engineers, inventors, doctors, medical researchers, and technological entrepreneurs whose inventions will return benefits to society exceeding the costs of the space effort hundreds of times over. America would not only enjoy an era of productive citizens, but also an age of unified citizens. Youth love adventure. They are stirred by the very syllables in the word. If captivated by the idea that living on another planet could be achievable, the hearts of the American youth would ignite with a desire to learn math and science in hopes of contributing to the colonization of Mars. This dream, shared among millions, would linger for generations. Prioritizing the establishment of a settlement on Mars would reawaken a hopeful spirit of unity among American citizens, a spirit of unity different from the one we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic or the panic surrounding 9/11. Unified public support is unquestionably a critical component for progress within democracy. In a minute, I'll explain how, without public support, colonizing Mars won't be possible. America should prioritize the development of a Mars colony within the next 2 decades. Such a challenging endeavor would produce new technologies which Americans can repurpose to steward the Earth and help those in need. In order to encourage the rest of the world to use these technologies and discoveries for good, our country ought to lead the efforts to colonize Mars. For example, we could learn how to use the deuterium available on Mars to better meet our energy needs. Furthermore, colonizing Mars would increase our country's employment rate and unify our country behind a common goal. For all these reasons and more, the US government, the private sector, and several nations have committed to investing in the project to colonize the Red Planet. But, as I mentioned toward the beginning of my speech, NASA requires continued public support so that the agency does not delay in sending humans to Mars. To quote Dr. Zubrin's book, The Case for Space, NASA's space program is our space program. We are paying for it. We have a right to insist on real results. Dr. Zubrin mentioned that one of the best ways for a U.S. citizen to make known his or her desire to colonize the Red Planet is to pay a small fee to become a member of a space activist organization. These organizations seek to educate the public on the benefits of space exploration while also persuading the government to lend more support for space activities. However, simply discussing the points of my speech with your friends and family is an equally helpful way to increase public support. I would also strongly encourage you all to conduct a bit of personal research on this topic. Be aware that if you do decide to research, you will definitely come across some secular arguments. That being said, I think it is beneficial for you, my brothers and sisters in Christ, to understand these different perspectives and be ready to engage with unbelievers on this topic. 1 Peter 3:15 calls the believer to always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, with gentleness and respect. When atheists consider going to Mars, they pin their hopes first on finding answers about life, and second, on escaping the inevitable destruction of Earth. In response, Christians can share our beliefs on how life began. We can also agree with them that the Earth will one day be destroyed. We can explain that God will destroy it, and that he provided the only means of escape through his Son. Also, those who show such great enthusiasm for living on Mars hope that great explorations and discoveries await. In answer to that space enthusiast who is drawn in by the beauty of Mars, Christians can exclaim how the heavens declare the glory of God. Finally, as Christians considering the idea of colonizing Mars, our hopes, our motivations for supporting this endeavor should be God-honoring. We ought to persuade the government and the public to share in that hope. Of course, we cannot expect to persuade everyone, so I invite you all to take comfort in knowing this. The creator of the universe looks at his small red sphere spinning in the dark heart of space, and he already knows the role it will play within his sovereign plan. Though man may plan out his ways and motivations for reaching Mars, the Lord can always turn one small step for man into one giant leap for his glory.